who spoke of the grace that was to come to you, searched intently and with the greatest care, trying to find out the time and circumstances to which the Spirit of Christ in them was pointing when he predicted the sufferings of Christ and the glories, not glory, but glories, plural, the glories that would follow. Folks, two of the most powerful prophecies found in the Old Testament, we read one of them today, and that's from Psalm 22. But listen, the Jews don't like to read that. The Jews don't like to read that. They don't like to read Isaiah 52 and 53. Because these two passages in the Old Testament, they paint this horrible picture of God's servant coming and being abused. And then you go to the New Testament. We got John chapter 18 and chapter 19. And I'm a John freak. You guys know that. I love John. John's my favorite gospel. John chapter 18 and chapter 19 go from the arrest of Jesus Christ through his death on the cross and his burial in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. It records, and it doesn't give us time, but we know that it's hours of abuse. It's hours of multiple beatings, of flogging, treatment with complete contempt, lies, the mock trial. If you've never seen The Passion of the Christ done by Mel Gibson, you need to see that. You can't see it by yourself. Better to see it in a group because it will move you. It is the best depiction of the sufferings of Christ. And if you ever listen to what happened while they were doing it, while he was up on the cross, the actor was hit by lightning. He began to suffer from hypothermia during the scene, and he told them, "No, I'll do this." While they were flogging him, how they did was they put this wrap around him. And it was a metal wrap. And they put skin tone on. One of the pieces of the cat o' nine tails came around the side and got a hold of a piece of his meat and pulled it off. And he said, "No, keep going." Now see, as bad as you think that is, nobody asked Jesus, "Do you want us to stop now?" It kept going. And the abuse was laid out for us in Psalm 22. It's laid out for us in Isaiah 52 and 53. And here's just a small part of it. Go to John chapter 19, verses 1 through 6. John chapter 19. Here's just a small part of these hours and hours of abuse. This is nearing the end of the abuse. And here's what happens. John chapter 19, starting verse 1. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged, cat o' nine tails, beaten 39 times. If you know much about the practice of the Romans, it was an absolute torturous beating. Remember, they believed that if you hit somebody 40 times, it would kill them. So the point was to beat them almost to death. That's free. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him with a purple robe. And he went, and they went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him in the face. Once more, Pilate came out and said to the Jews, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." One of the things they would do while they were examining you, and the flogging was an examination, as they would beat you, and if you would fess up to whatever you were being beaten for, they would quit beating you. Wasn't that nice? Jesus took it to 39 times. "Look, I'm bringing him out to you, so I find no basis for the charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here's the man! Behold the man is what you made." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" You think for a minute any of the prophets of the Old Testament really could see their people, the people of their own flesh and blood, their great-great-grandsons, their great-great-granddaughters, yelling, "Crucify the Messiah"? Could any of you see your children doing that to someone who was a righteous man? We couldn't do that. I don't know how much these prophets were given, but they couldn't have imagined it. Not for a moment. How about some more hindsight? There's more hindsight? This is good. This is positive. Let's go to Hebrews, the 9th chapter. The book of Hebrews, the 9th chapter. Don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews? Very wonderful Jewish man writing to a Jewish audience. Here's what he says in chapter 9. The writer says in chapter 9, starting in verse 11. When Christ came as high priest of the good things that are already here, he went through the greater and more perfect tabernacle that is not man-made, that is to say, not a part of this creation over out of this world. Verse 12. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once and for all by his own blood, having obtained eternal redemption. The blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sprinkled on those who are ceremonially unclean, sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more then will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself unblemished to God, cleanse our consciences, our innards, from acts that lead to death, so that we may serve the living God. You understand the law couldn't provide any of what we just read there? All the law said was you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. The best you can do is roll back your sin for another year. The law pointed that we needed grace. And when grace came, there was no more need for blood. And I'm kind of all over that. So we have the entire New Testament for hindsight. And please understand this. The apostles, they didn't have the New Testament. They could say, well, if you read John 19, you'll understand the crucifixion. They didn't have it. They had witnessed it. We have it. That's why it is so good to live now. But there's even one more thing. And that is early this morning and finally. You know what finally means? It means the preacher speaks for another 5 or 6 minutes. The prophets foretold things that we